So my last video was a bit spicy, and a few people didn't like it. We were of course talking about the Twitter backlash for this specific poster for the Rings of Power, and calling a lot of these comments racist, and I stand by that. However, I think some people mistook me calling racist people racist as calling all fans who want the lore to be respected racist. See, by the time I made my video, only these early promo pictures had been released, and not these newer screenshots, which is really where the fandom started going ballistic. So naturally, a lot of the nuance of the current debate wasn't there, since I wrote my script before a lot of it had even come out. And so we're here today to have a more comprehensive discussion, since I also now understand the other side of the debate a bit more. That means the angry fans, not the racists. We still don't like them. Alright, but also just real quick, I'm very annoyed. I was like 90% done with this script, talking about the promo posters, but then that stupid teaser trailer came out, and then I had to rewrite some sections and try to incorporate it into this video, and honestly, I'm already tired of talking about this show. There are too many headaches. But yeah, just keep in mind that I wrote most of this script with only the promo posters available. I mean, the teaser doesn't really add too much. I think some things look pretty cool, like the troll and that big battle scene and some of the landscapes, and other things look really bad, like Galadriel I think it is, climbing on the icebergs. But listen, this is a teaser trailer and a lot of these problems could get polished up before release. But I completely understand if you don't think this show looks very promising. That's perfectly understandable, but it's also alright to be hyped for this show. But yeah, anyways, let's just get into the main discussion for today. So like I said, most of the script was written before the trailer came out, so I've based the discussion off of the promo posters. And to be honest, some of them get me quite hyped, like this dwarf who looks sexy as hell, and also a bit of this one because I'm glad they finally added modern age cameras into the Lord of the Rings. But if I'm being honest, this show so far doesn't look too promising. I don't trust Amazon to have the best interests of the franchise at heart. I really don't know how I feel about the people involved. Also, it all just looks really clean. One of my favorite things about the Lord of the Rings is how the world feels like it's been lived in. The clothes look like they're from a fantasy, but they still look realistic. It looks like these characters have worn these clothes more than once. There's dirt on everything, because of course there is. The world feels real. So listen, you don't need to be racist to take issue with these promotional images, okay? That's an important distinction to make. Canonically, female dwarves should have long beards. Elves should be tall and have long hair. Right now, the costumes and backgrounds look like cosplay photos. And also, everyone is way too traditionally hot for the Lord of the Rings. Don't get me wrong, the characters in the movies have a lot of sexual power, but they're hot because they're dirty. You get me? I'm way more attracted to Aragorn as a ranger than when he becomes a king and is all shiny. These things are valid to point out. It doesn't necessarily mean you're right though. There could be a story-specific reason why she doesn't have a long beard or why he doesn't have long hair. Maybe someone cut it off. And often promo posters and teaser trailers look very different from the actual shows. Basically, you can criticize these things, you might not be correct, we don't know yet, but it's valid. However, racism isn't. Just because a dwarf is black doesn't mean they're not still a dwarf. But if they don't have a luscious beard and follow the cultures of dwarves, then that's where we have a problem. There's a very slight difference and it can be hard to spot. But listen, if they're gonna bring different skin colors into the Lord of the Rings, then they should go all the way. I don't just want one black elf, I want a lot of them. And also, don't just have one black dwarf in like a society of white dwarves. That wouldn't make sense. However, if there's diversity in this show and it ends up being shallow, and for the wrong reasons, the fault will not lie with diversity. It'll lie with bad writing and bad intentions. The color of someone's skin does not make something badly written. Bad writing makes something badly written. I'll be incredibly upset if there are just random token black characters throughout the show, because that just shows that they're bringing in diversity for the wrong reasons. So trust me when I say that there are valid things to be nervous about. But again, we won't know until we watch it. There's very limited footage from the show. We don't know if these characters will be incorporated into the story in a satisfying way. We don't know if some of these changes to lore like beardless dwarves will be fixed before release. We don't know any of this. It's okay to be skeptical and nervous, but let's try to save our anger for when the show actually comes out. And also, just so we understand, even if the show comes out and it's horrendously bad, that still does not give us the right to be toxic and racist. If that happens, then we give our criticisms, we tell them to do better, then we go back to actually talking about the things we do like. At least that's my dream. Anyways, in my last video we discussed the growing tensions on Twitter, but today I want to quickly talk about the Lord of the Rings subreddit page, because holy fuck, it's like the Wild West over there. Or at least it was a couple days ago. As of now, it's pretty settled down, and most of the posts about race in general have been deleted, but wow. For a couple of days, I didn't even recognize it as a Lord of the Rings fan page. Basically, I only just joined Reddit like a week ago, and I've been having a fun time. Naturally, I joined the Lord of the Rings subreddit, and it was a really wholesome place for a bit, where people were just sharing memes about potatoes. It was peak entertainment, not gonna lie. But after the promo posters came out, it was like a war zone over there between people being racist and other people calling them out for bigotry. And then thirdly, there were the Tolkien mega fans who don't like changes to the lore, but aren't necessarily racist, but they still hold the same position as the racist ones, and suddenly it became really hard to distinguish toxic fans from just the passionate fans. And I really hope it doesn't turn down the same path, because I don't want that fate for this fandom. I wouldn't want that fate for even my greatest enemy. But anyways, in my last video I talked a lot about the people who were downright being racist, but now I want to go a bit more in depth with this whole lore argument and the Anglo-Saxon argument, because it's an argument I see a lot, and there's also a lot of nuance that requires attention. So the first argument that I've seen a lot in these past couple of days is the main one about lore, and how the lore shouldn't be changed, which is an argument that confuses me, especially when it comes from people who love the movies, because as you may know, Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings trilogy are some of the most successful and beloved fantasy movies of all time, but they changed a lot of things from the books. A handful of the more well-known changes include the exclusion of Tom Bombadil, the exclusion of the final battle for the Shire, the hobbits being different ages, and many of the characters being completely different, such as Frodo and Aragorn. The elves also showed up for Helm's Deep in the movies when they didn't in the books. These things all went against established lore, but they worked. The movies turned out fantastic. Both the books and the movies live side by side in harmony, despite being different. So why does the inclusion of black elves, despite elves not being described as black in the books, pose such a threat to you? I guess some people truly are hardcore Tolkien fans and don't even like the movies or anything else. And honestly, fair enough. But some people only care about the lore to this extent if they can use it to be a bigot. However, not everyone who's defending the lore is a bigot. Yes, Jackson's movies changed some stuff from the lore, but they still stay true to the essence of Tolkien's work. And this show could also change the lore, but do it in a way that doesn't make sense whatsoever. That would be bad, and it's alright to point that out. But a character's skin color being different is not necessarily one of those things, especially if that's all you focus on like some of these people do. Like we said before, there are genuine things to be upset about when it comes to the lore, but let's just try not to be racist, okay? Cool. But anyways, then we get into the historical/cultural argument. And let me just start out by saying that a lot of fantasy is based on English and European history and culture in general. So I'm just thinking, if all modern adaptations were to be faithful to the most common skin color of these regions, then there'd just be white people in fantasy nowadays. That wouldn't be very cool, would it? Now in historical pieces, yes, it would be best to keep characters as the same skin color, especially if it's important to the history or if they're based on real people. But this is fantasy, not history. You can still make fantasy media based on European culture and have people of different skin colors. That's how the world looks today. For example, there are a lot of black people in England, and a lot of them are fully British. Their parents are British, they only speak English, and they're fully assimilated into British culture. Yes, their ancestry might date back to other places, but they're fully British. People of color have existed in English and European context for hundreds of years. My point is that culture does not have to be related to skin color, especially not when it comes to fantasy. Now let's look at this argument that a lot of people are using, namely that Tolkien's works are based on Anglo-Saxon culture, therefore there shouldn't be black people. People who genuinely use this argument to criticize the inclusion of black people in the show honestly need to reevaluate some things. But essentially, to those who don't know, the Anglo-Saxons were people who migrated from Northern Europe to England many centuries ago, more specifically around the year 410 after the Romans left England. The Anglo-Saxons helped defend and unite the British Isles, they innovated new methods of combat, and they helped to spread Christianity around the world. A lot of stories have also come from the Anglo-Saxons, such as Beowulf. But the Anglo-Saxons were also vulnerable, and the rule over England ended around 1066, when the Normans from France defeated them and took control of England. Also, just quickly, I'm not an expert in this stuff. I did some basic research for this section, but there's a lot more to it. One of the videos I watched from this is one from the Kavernacle, who talks about this Anglo-Saxon history and actually relates it to the Lord of the Rings and Tolkien. But just be aware that he is very left-leaning, alright? Like me. So obviously he has a certain perspective on the situation. Just be aware of that. Everyone has biases and it's good to know. But if you want a more neutral and purely historical video, check out this one by Captivating History. But there are also many great videos on the topic out there. But anyways, this is where Tolkien comes into play, because Tolkien did not like the French for apparently destroying Anglo-Saxon culture and preventing it and the language from reaching its true potential. This wasn't just something that he himself thought. There were a lot of people who thought this way. Essentially, Anglo-Saxon culture saw itself as being purer than the more southern parts of Europe, like the Spanish and the Mediterranean countries, due to reasons such as them having previously been occupied by Muslim control. And Anglo-Saxon racial superiority was also a key ingredient in English and American thought in the late 19th century, which is when Tolkien was born, and his work is definitely influenced by it. Tolkien was a product of his time, like we all are. He wrote his books a certain way, and a lot of it highlights the time period. But why can't we adapt some of this stuff to a more modern way of thinking, as long as it's still respectful to the source material? This new show may very well end up being an attack on Tolkien's lore, but anyone who believes that it's an attack on Anglo-Saxon culture is just buying into this whole Anglo-Saxon myth that English and Northern Europeans were highest up in this racial pyramid. They thought they were superior to all other races, including other white races. So tell me, why should we need to adhere to this outdated and prejudiced way of thinking? We absolutely should adhere to the most important aspects of Tolkien's lore, but just like with Peter Jackson's movies, as long as it still captures the magic of Tolkien's works, changes are fine. Skin color really shouldn't be a factor. And listen, some people are taking this very personally, saying that they're proud of their Anglo-Saxon heritage, whatever that means, being heartbroken that it's being ruined. And listen, I'm Danish. Anglo-Saxon history is also part of the history of my own country. But how the fuck does that matter whatsoever? No one can really prove that they're of Anglo-Saxon descent. And even if you truly are super proud of your Anglo-Saxon heritage, that love and pride you have for this culture must be really fucking fragile if you're getting annoyed at some black dwarves. Do you know what would be annoying? If they changed the map of Middle-earth, or they created some ridiculous storylines when Tolkien himself wrote thousands of storylines for them to go off of. That could definitely be the case, and that would be annoying. But as long as they try to recapture the magic of this world, then I don't give a flying fuck what the skin color of the characters are. As long as the elves feel like elves and the dwarves feel like dwarves, then I'm fine. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Listen, I get it. There's a lot riding on this show, and a lot of people have a lot of stakes in it. It would really suck if the show ended up changing the vast lore of the world in a way that would compromise the storytelling. However, my main stances have always been these. Don't use lore and Tolkien's works as an excuse to be racist. Lore is absolutely relevant in this situation, and if they fuck it up massively and completely disregard it just to profit and show how inclusive they are, then yeah, that would be insulting towards the legacy of the franchise and to the fans. But there's a big difference between people who genuinely care about the show being good or not, and people who are just using this situation to be racist, while being defended for being racist by other Lord of the Rings fans. So that's my first sentiment. Don't be racist. My second is, let's wait until the show actually comes out before we make our final verdicts. Yes, we can make our opinions heard, and perhaps they'll listen to us. This happened with the Sonic movie, and that turned out really well. Maybe they'll listen to us and give the female dwarf a longer beard. Maybe there's a reason her beard is short. Or maybe they just don't care. It's completely alright to make your opinions heard as a fan, but please try to make it constructive. Please try to act decently, because you really think being overly vicious and racist is going to make them change their minds? No, of course not. I talked about this in my last video, but when fandoms act like this, it never turns out well for the fans or the franchise. And listen, I know it's incredibly hard to distinguish yourself sometimes from the truly toxic people, especially if you're just a really passionate fan, because those same toxic people will pretend to be on your side, and then you'll get placed in the same box as they do by angry leftists like me, calling everybody racist. But yeah, my main arguments are don't be racist, like a lot of these people are being, and please wait until the show comes out before you fully make up your mind about it. Believe me, I don't trust Amazon either. I don't believe they have the best interests of the franchise at heart. They just want to profit, and perhaps the people actually making the show don't care about it either. But we can hope that at least some of them actually do love Tolkien's work and want to bring some of it to life with the love and attention that it deserves, and with the capabilities of modern filmmaking. But what do you guys think? I know my last video was very similar to this one, but this one is updated to fit the newest information we've received. I really pray that the Lord of the Rings fandom doesn't end up like the Star Wars fandom did, where division and toxicity is all new fans see when they try to come come in. Let's please go back to making wholesome memes, waiting patiently for this show to come out, and if it does end up being an abomination, then we can just pretend that it's a fan fiction and forget about it. Whatever happens, this show can't hurt the legacy of the franchise if you don't let it. But anyways, as always, let me know your opinions on this situation. What are your thoughts on the trailer, and what do you think about the growing division within the fandom? Let me know down below. Thank you so much to our lovely Patreons, including our first Turf captain, Ben Joseph. If you want to further support the channel too, then go and check out my Patreon for some cool benefits. And join our Discord server if you haven't already. But other than that, I hope you all have a wonderful day, stay safe, and peace out.